Okay, here we go with first part of chapter 9, Fever and Distress. A pale and overcast dawn had turned Eric's room grey. He was awake early, and for a moment in his dizziness he wondered why it was so urgent to get up. Big Erik had been calling for him to run away. No, that was a dream. Then he remembered, and ran to the bathroom to be sick in the sink. His mouth tasted of sour apples. "Mum?" Erik leaned on the doorframe to his parents' room. The two of them looked peaceful, asleep in bed. "Mum," Erik said louder. She lifted her head, dishevelled brown hair covering her face. "Erik, what's the matter?" "I've been sick." "Go and lie down in your room. I shall come to you in a minute." The ceiling of his room was whiter now, its rough plastering and ridges of whitewash reminding him of the snow landscapes you could get in the amphitheatre when practicing epic. "What's the matter, Erik?" his mum said. His mum felt his forehead. "I'm sick. My tummy hurts." "Where exactly?" "Here." He rested his hand just below his belly button. The warmth of it was comforting. Brushing aside his damp fringe, his mum kissed him. The touch of her lips was cool. "Oh, Erik, you're burning up. Do you think you could ride a cart to Hope, to see the doctors there?" "Oh yes, a cart ride. Leban can take me." Erik was mumbling, but becoming more feverish as he spoke. The journey to Hope took forever, and yet they arrived all at once. Harold unpacked Erik from the furs in which he had travelled. It was suddenly very cold, and he shivered. The hospital was like the library, he thought, lots of windows. It was too much of an effort to walk, so when people put their hands on his limbs and head to carry him, he did not shake them off. The bed they put him into was white and cool. "Hello, young man," a kindly-looking doctor said, smiling down at him. "Can you show me where it hurts?" The doctor lifted back the sheet, and Erik pointed. "And does it hurt more when I press?" Erik shook his head. "Or when I let go?" The moment the doctor lifted his hand, Erik's body jerked up with a violent spasm of pain. "Well, that's pretty clear-cut, eh?" The doctor replaced the sheet and went away with his dad. Soon, though, Harold returned. "Erik," he said, sitting beside his son. "Yes?" "Every person has an organ known as an appendix. Sometimes these go bad and have to be removed. It's not that unusual, but you'll have to stay here for a while afterwards. The doctor says that we are very lucky that your mum made me bring you straight away. It could have been much worse, but now you will be fine." "Really? Could I have died?" His dad hesitated. "Possibly." That was good. It would impress his friends more to tell them that he could have died. "It's an injustice, though," Harold growled. "What, Dad?" "If you were in Micklegard and a senior epic player, they would treat you differently," he paused. "Or if we had thousands of Byzants." Erik could see his dad was angry, but couldn't follow his reasoning. "Here, the doctor says the necessary equipment has been broken for over 20 years. Here, they have to use surgery. You will be left with a scar and it will take longer to heal." "How long?" 2 weeks. With a jolt of dismay that temporarily woke him from his fever, Erik understood the meaning behind his dad's words. "But Dad, that's the first stage of the graduation tournament." "Aye." Harold let out a long, sad breath. "Still, son, your health is more important than anything else, and, after all, you are in no hurry to move from Osterfield." "I know, it's not for me, it's the others." A jumble of thoughts and feelings swirled around Erik's head. "What's going to happen to the team? We were all set up as the Osterfield players. Innie, B.E., Sigrid. Bjorn even gave up his place on the agricultural school team to be with us. What about all our practicing?" Erik trailed off feverishly. The hours of preparation in the hunting grounds and the arena faded to irrelevance. His dream of finding a way to challenge central allocations now seemed like an impossible fantasy. Erik and Harold sat in silence, downcast. That afternoon, the hospital porters came for him, lifting him onto a trolley. As it rolled along the hospital corridor, it gave out a squeak that cycled around and around like a distressed bird. The plaster on the roof of the corridors he passed underneath was cracked, and in some places a patch of yellow stone was visible where it had come away altogether. Eventually, they parked the trolley in a room with a large, movable light, poised over him like a snake, ready to strike. For a long time he was left there alone, listening to the banging of distant doors, worried about the snake. Then the room began to fill with people, and he caught snatches of conversation. You have to make the incision around here and peel back the skin until you can grasp the inflamed appendix. There shouldn't be too much blood, but just in case, have one nurse wiping so you can see what you're doing. He should have a clamp ready too. You never know. And then the nurse realised that Erik could hear what they were saying. Could you please get on and administer the anaesthetic? She snapped. Here, inhale this. A pungent cotton pad, held at the end of a long pair of prongs, was put before Erik's nose. He breathed in. Erik woke up from the operation very sore. The slightest movement was extremely painful, so he lay on his back listening to the other people in the room. Echoes of footfalls against hard floors told him that the room he was in was large. A faint murmur of voices was all around, none of them loud enough for individual words to be distinguishable. The day passed slowly, marked by the changing quality of the light as shadows withdrew from the cracked pattern of the ceiling, only to crawl forwards again until they were dispelled by a nurse lighting up the oil lamps. The night time was worse, though. Sleep came only fitfully. It was not only that he kept waking up as a result of his body moving too much, it was also being in a strange room. Erik was conscious of being surrounded by sick children. There was often hushed activity somewhere out of sight, and always a faint humming sound in the background. The following day, a nurse made him get up while he changed the sheets. It was agony, and Erik could not believe how cruel the nurse was to insist that he move to the chair beside the bed. It was the first time he had looked down at his stomach since the operation. His cotton top was stuck fast to his body with blood. Trying to peel it off aroused a sharp pain more terrible than bending, so he left it. The sheets that the nurse took with him were also covered in blood. Each day, Erik found it was easier to accomplish the bending of his body as he swung his legs onto the floor, and each day more and more of the dry blood flaked away, until at last, with great relief, he could pull off the stained cotton top. The area below his stomach had a great white scar, about halfway between his belly button and his right hip. It looked like a pallid white worm, and it was nearly a foot long. The soft flesh was held together by a dozen large stitches. Now at least he could walk about slowly, holding his sore side, and wearing a new cotton tunic and trousers that he had been given by the hospital. One afternoon, his mum and dad brought his friends along. They came in looking about tentatively, disconcerted by the size of the room and the numbers of people gathered around the beds. "Here, Ingeborg!" He waved to them and they hurried over. "We have presents for you, Erik," Ingeborg said proudly. Sigrid handed him a jar of honey. "Oh, great, thank you, Sigrid. The food here is awful." He put the jar on the table beside the bed. "Bjorn, give him your present." Ingeborg was eager for Erik to see what they had brought him. "Here, Erik." Bjorn sheepishly took a cardboard box from his bag. There was a painting on the cover of a boat at sea near Osterfjord. Erik opened the box, and inside were hundreds of little jigsaw pieces made from thin cardboard. "He spent all day on it, Erik, cutting them out, and they have a coat of varnish on top to keep the paint on." Ingeborg's eyes flashed with pleasure. "I tried to get the painting the same both times, but you can always tell it's the right piece by the fit," Bjorn muttered shyly. "Thank you, Bjorn. It's a really good present. And here's mine." Ingeborg drew out an entangled mess of string and wood. At first, Erik thought it was a puppet. Thanks, Ingeborg," he said, starting to unravel it. Then he saw that it was a mobile for hanging up. "I thought it would remind you of Osterfjord," Ingeborg explained eagerly. "See, here is a shell from the beach, and that is a cone from your fur, and that's supposed to be your donkey, only it's hard to draw. But can you see? I clipped a tiny bit of hair from Laban's tail." Erik laughed. "Ingeborg, it's magic. I wonder if they'll let me hang it from the nail there." "Of course they will. Tie it up, Bjorn." Her big brother glanced around the room, looking for someone to ask permission of. Then, with an apologetic shrug, he stood on a chair and tied the mobile to the nail. It balanced well with the two main arms slowly turning back and forth around each other. "That's really good, Innie." Erik looked up at the affectionate smiles of his friends. That they had been thinking of him enough to take this much trouble with their presents was a revelation. Erik noticed that B.E. was waiting for him. Here, I hope you haven't read it already. B.E. gave him a book. Lessons in Epic Strategy. No, I haven't. Erik opened it curiously. It had a fascinating contents page. Single-player combats, spells for outdoor battles, and many more. This looks really good. Thank you for parting with it, Big Erik. B.E. just waved away the thanks. It's no bother. I never got time to study it properly, but you might, being stuck here for 2 weeks. Their faces, so bright and friendly, suddenly fell. It's such bad luck, said Sigrid. Ingeborg shook her head tearfully. Ja, and me and Bjorn will be too old next year. We've missed our chance to play together. That's the end of the Osterfield players. B.E. was matter-of-fact. Who have you got to replace me? Erik asked. They looked at each other. We discussed it, Erik, and we decided only to play in the individual championship. It wouldn't be the same without you. Ingeborg was their spokesperson. Ja, Bjorn said. Not so fun. You are the one that makes the team, with your passion for the game. It's not right to play if you were not there, explained Sigrid. And in any case, we wouldn't get very far without your swashbuckler. She was to be our surprise weapon. I'm sorry. Erik was embarrassed by the tears that came to his eyes, and which he found impossible to hide. Don't be sorry, Erik, said Ingeborg. It's you that's important, not the game. In any case, who wants to go away to Micklegard University? That's it for today. See you tomorrow for the second part.